Welcome back from the break. Now, this year, the federal government will host youths from across the nation for the National Youth Conference, which is expected to take place later in February. Experts have said it will be a pivotal event for Nigeria, especially over half of the country's population is under the age of 35. The 30-day conference aims to address critical issues like youth unemployment, education, technology, entrepreneurship, and innovation. Youth empowerment, and inclusion in governance. In Nigeria, the unemployment rate decreased to 4.3% in the second quarter of 2024, reflecting a 1 percentage point drop from the 5.3% recorded in the first quarter of 2024. As you look forward to this event, we will like to explore how youth can make them sellable for employment through innovation and tech. Interesting conversation we'll be having. And joining us live via Zoom is the technology and innovation expert, Lucky Opono. Mr. Lucky, good morning, and thanks for joining us on the show.
Good morning, Sly. Thank you for having me on the show this morning.
Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you, sir.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, so let's just go on. So, of course, statistics shows that unemployment rate has a slight decrease, but we'll still have a high numbers of unemployed youth wallowing away. How can we encourage these young ones to be a lot more productive in this new year, knowing fully well that there's a lot at stake when it has to do with youth not getting employed in the country?
Correct. So I don't really think it's a unemployment rate. It's issue that is actually limited to Nigeria alone. Unemployment has suffered globally post-COVID, as we all know. However, our recovery rate has not been encouraging as expected in Nigeria. And this is attributed or driven by lack of strategic policy by the government. And there is a lot of expectation from the government to actually drive policies and actually put down a thriving environment for youths to be employed. Having said that, I think we all have our work cut out for us. The youths shouldn't rely on the government alone. Like we've brought initiatives into the country, myself and my team, and we've initiative around upskilling in technology, and the result has been remarkably unbelievable. The youths that have actually engaged in our programs and have been able to go on to actually get jobs. Nigeria is full of opportunities. So there are low-hanging opportunities in Nigeria, not limited to technology, finance, even design. So I think it's high time the youths roll up their sleeves and cut down their vices. Youth should be able to actually save towards and identify opportunities they can actually upskill in, and then save towards upskilling and be able to actually transition from where they are currently to be able to find those opportunities. So not depending on the government alone to actually create that favorable environment does not actually work. We have one of the biggest working population in the world, and I think the government and myself and those in the diaspora have a lot of work to do to actually create an enabling environment, both in technology and other thriving sectors, to enable the youth to start to harness opportunities. And by doing so, we can start to actually drive down that high rate of unemployment post-COVID.
Okay, you spoke about how the government policy is to enable and create an enabling environment for everyone to thrive. And this is a major factor in trying to address the rate of unemployment. But you've also spoke about how every hands must be on deck, whether from the private sector or the public sector, and even the Nigerians themselves. Now, let's look at how some tricks of how trade can be done have to be employed. As an expert, what are some of the tricks of the trade to get one employed?
I think it starts with a positive mindset, especially for the Gen Z. and the youth. I think Nigeria will actually, for a long time, we've had this perception of I can do it alone, but for any nation to actually drive forward and improve their GDP and have a thriving economy, I think everyone has to actually work collaboratively. So that mentality of I can do it alone, I think youths today should start to actually take their mindset off that working in isolation. So we do have problems. So do every other country, and job comes from solving problems. So I do hear a lot of youth saying, I need a job. What job? So you can actually create job out of thin air. So by finding solutions to problem, that way youth can actually create opportunity, find out opportunities, and may be able to create job. So there's problem everywhere, and like there are problems everywhere in Nigeria, globally, and looking for solutions. So being able to find a solution to that problem will actually create that enabling environment for youths to start to identify those opportunities. There are quite a lot of low-hanging opportunities, and thinking outside the box and being creative and taking off that mindset of doing it alone. I think youth should start actually bringing themselves off that mindset and work collaboratively going forward.
After hearing you now, it looks as if some youths, there's a discussion where if some are even employable. There's also the discussion of how the market is favorable in Nigeria. So there's that discussion where, okay, we don't have the enabling environment is not here, so let's do the JAPA. You understand? Where they go to other countries for majorly education and employment, and of course, there's this perception that they go and just do the hot jobs. How can Nigerian youth put themselves higher for a better employment home and abroad? Because it's a discussion that we need to have, the JAPA syndrome, and of course, coming back to the JAPADA syndrome.
So I believe that JAPA syndrome or JAPA phenomenon is a mixed story, because there are a lot of Nigerians coming back home to actually set up shops. And in as much as you have quite a lot of Nigerians whose plan going into a new year is to actually JAPA, go overseas for better opportunities, you still have quite a sizable population of Nigeria coming back home to be able to create opportunities. And I would use tech as that global phenomenon. We live in a digital-driven world. And Nigeria, in recent years, Nigeria has quietly emerged as a significant player in the global talent outsourcing market in technology. So I would liken that. So I tend to actually compare where Nigeria is and where India was 20 years ago. So India is actually leading in the outsourcing market. And what have they done? We should be looking at what has India done right, where India creates an environment where multinationals are able to actually outsource technology jobs, software and digital projects delivery to India. And in doing so, I'll give you a statistics. I think in 2022, the global remittance was $856 billion, and India received $125 billion in inward remittance, money coming into the country, helping to actually soft pedal, cushion the economy. And Nigeria, I think we had less than 15 billion in remittance coming into the country, and 80% of that remittance are families sending money, and people sending money overseas to families in Nigeria. But we can't actually place a reasonable figure of that remittance coming from outsourcing jobs into Nigeria. Again, I mentioned earlier on, we do have one of the biggest working population, if not the biggest in Africa, and competing with the likes of China and India. So I know the government have a lot to do, and they have a responsibility to put strategic policies in place to actually support outsourcing roles, outsourcing job opportunities. But the likes of myself and others in the diaspora in the tech industry also have a big role to play to actually come back, set up shop, create an enabling environment where youths can actually make themselves useful. They can easily transition into the tech today due to that open market policy. As I mentioned earlier, outsourcing. We as a country, as a government, I think the government has a role to play in actually creating policies and strategic policies that will actually enable organizations to be able to come set up shops. So my company recently set up shop in Nigeria, and as I mentioned earlier, we have been able to create opportunities for youths, and the expectation has been quite remarkable over the last few months, and we intend to actually continue to do so. But that enabling environment is still quite limited, and we need that. So we need the support from government. We need that private investment, the likes of myself and others in the diaspora, to actually come back home and start to actually create those opportunities. Nigeria is full of low-hanging opportunities, but the professionals, the government, we in the diaspora, we need to actually drive that and be able and lead the youth into this revolution, because
wow. Mr. John Opuno, this are just technical issues. We hope to have you back. I have one more question to ask you. If you can be able to connect, I'll be very, very happy to have that question with you. But of course, it's been about the youth's innovation and how the Nigerian youth can be able to take advantage of some of the policies of governments, and of course, in 2025, most especially that has to do with information and technology. Nigeria is ranking one of the best. Okay, we have Mr. John Opuno. Mr. John, can you hear me?
Sorry, Mr. Lucky Opuno.
Sorry, Mr. Lucky, sorry. Why do I have John on my head? Mr. Lucky, okay, so I just want to ask you, what are the practical steps, the Nigerian youth need to take in actually closing up this? Because it's a different ballgame when we have the discussion. It's a different ballgame when the policy are there. And it's a different ballgame when the policy needs to be executed. And it's a different ballgame that when the policy is executed, the people who the policies are meant for take advantage of it. So what are the practical steps that our youth need to start having to get that?
Yeah, the practical steps, as I would say to every youth, I'm able to actually give advice. So I'll just say this briefly. So someone came to me a couple of days ago to say, I want to japa. What are the steps you think I should take? What is the cost involved? And my advice to that youth was, you need to be able to hone a skill, ideally a technology skill. So my advice to the youth is, look at the relevant tech skill out there. You don't necessarily need to actually have gone to the university to study computer science or an engineering course. There are numerous tech skills out there that are entry point into software development, into technology. And if the youth can actually be able to put themselves, have an open mind to be able to transition into tech by having these skills. So there are quite numerous skills there. So business analysis for one. Anyone can be a business analyst, for example. I always tell the youth. So regardless of what you've studied at the university. So I think that is the first practical step. Instead of actually relying on the government or relying on private sector to actually come create jobs, youth can actually go out there, save some money, look at platforms that can enable you to actually upskill, transition into tech. And in doing so, you're creating a job for yourself. You're going out there to actually look for that opportunity. So that's my advice for the youth. And it's so that's my advice for the youth, and it's works for a lot of youths. I've given this advice, and yeah, I think that's the first practical step, and every other thing will align eventually, because you need a skill in Nigeria to be able to get a job. When you Japan, you also need a skill. If you want a blue collar job, you need to actually own a skill, and yeah, it's the first practical step to be able to have a future, have a short-term plan, as well as build on that short-term plan towards your long-term plan.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Lucky Opono, for joining us on the show and giving us some breakdowns on how the 2025 Nigerian youths of today can take advantage of some of the things happening around the world. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me today.
All right.
Cheers.
We'll go on a break. When we come back, we still have entertainment and sports.